And I run Israeli Stage, which is a Boston-based company which brings Israeli playwrights here to Boston. And we do works in translation from Hebrew to English. Very excited that you're all here today for sort of the coming out tour, if you will, for Nataly Zukerman, who is one of the up-and-coming artists in Israel. And we're really glad that you were able to join us. The program is about 45 minutes long, and then we'll have a short Q&A. Because we have another program right after with another class coming in. So thank you all so much for joining us.
Hi, my name is Nataly Zukerman. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming today. In 1990, when I was 12, I had an accident. It's not a car accident. It's rather a stupid accident, I think, anyway. An accident in the Scouts. We went to a summer camp up in the north of Israel, and we built, in accordance with the annual issue that was the Israeli army, we built a tank from big logs of wood. And this was where we all slept. It was Saturday morning, and I was sent to the kitchen to work. Now, the kitchen was really far away, and full with people I didn't know, and I was really afraid as a child from people I didn't know. Even today, I'm a bit timid with new people. So I lied. I said I had to bring something out of my bag. When I entered the tank, I heard, "Nataly, watch out!" And then the structure of the tank fell on me. I broke a vertebra in my back. I was paralyzed. I was hospitalized for about 6 months. I had to learn to walk again. I walked with crutches until I was about 16. Even today, it still affects me. I have a limp. I can't run. I can't jump. And I find it really hard to climb up the stairs. Hi, my name is Nataly Zukerman. In 1990, when I was 12, I had an accident and I broke a vertebra in my back. At night at the hospital, my mom asked my doctor, Dr. Hanani, 1 meter and 90 centimeters, 6'2", if I would dance again. If she walks again, I will be pleased. I broke vertebra L1. It's located around here. It was broken completely and was thrown into the trash. Instead, they've taken a bone taken from here, from my last pelvis, and they put it in. The vertebra above it got twisted, and they had to put it back in its place. The surgeon tied the two vertebrae together, the new and the old, and they've taken 2 metal plates and put them on both sides of my spine and left me with a scar. Actually, a few years ago, I had an X-ray, and I found out that one of them is broken. Professor Dekel, January 1994. Scar length is 23 centimeters at the back of the spine, in the thoracolumbar area. The scar is slightly ugly. Also, 10 permanent disability, not functional, due to the long scar on her back, according to section 75 on 1B. Nataly Zukerman. In 1990, when I was 12, I had an accident in the Scouts and I broke a vertebra in my back. I was paralyzed. I was hospitalized for about 6 months. I had to learn to walk again. I walked with crutches until I was about 16. And even today, it still affects me. I limp. I can't run, I can't jump, and I can't climb the stairs without any help. Today, I'm 39, almost 40. And I graduated not so long ago from Tel Aviv University, finishing my master's in performance. In one of the classes, I made a short piece, and at the end of it, Naama, my friend, she's a good friend of mine, she gave me some criticism, and she said, you always choose deliberately action that emphasizes your disability. Thank you. March 1991 till 1992. Dr. Shemesh, Professor Melamed, Professor Shapo, age 13. There is no doubt that her physical limitation undermine and disrupt her everyday routine and her integration in different social settings. She should be given psychological evaluation and follow-up support once or twice a week to accompany her integration in various social settings. In the X-ray given to her on her release date from the hospital, a satisfactory recovery of the fracture was shown. She does not participate in sports lessons, she does not go to the beach, and she doesn't go on school trips. The plaintiff will not be able to work at a job that requires standing and walking. She will be able to work full-time, only in a position that will allow her to sit down according to her education and skill. The plaintiff seemed to be mentally stable and there is no need for therapy. In 2000, I moved to Scotland to study performance. In the first scene of one of the shows I performed in, we were asked to walk like runway models. Pamela, the director, she's a very good friend of mine, she came and said, do you mind starting the runway show in order to emphasize your limp in comparison to the normal walk of the other models' performers. It was a great success. Everyone thought I used to be a former model. So the day after she came and said, do you mind exaggerating your limp? It just didn't really work last night and no one noticed this. A social worker, Gideon Haas, December 1992, age 13. In my opinion, this is a girl who is highly motivated, socially accepted by her peers, and is not feeling sorry for herself. She doesn't suffer from depression, she doesn't keep to herself, and I think she accepted the situation in a very positive way. In my opinion, supported also by Professor Shako, she does not need therapy or psychotherapy. Moreover, I think the victim can serve as an example of successful rehabilitation. When she will grow up, she will acquire a profession and will become a positive role model in society. Until a few years ago, I used to go on quite a lot of blind dates. And I don't want to sell them a pig in a poke, because eventually the question arises, what happened to your leg? And then what do I answer? So I want to tell you about a blind date I had with this guy called Tal. He was really good looking, cute, quite tall. And I think he really liked me too because we really flirted. While we were talking, he asked me what am I working on. So I told him about the Other Body and about my injury and the whole story that he heard many times. And while I was talking, I noticed that he seeps deeper and deeper into his chair. His facial expression ranges between suffering and agony. Tal, is everything okay? I feel like I'm drowning, but I can't say anything. You keep talking, you keep talking. Come on, Tal, it's nothing. I tell the same story since I was 12. Hi, my name is Nataly Zukerman. In 1990, when I was 12, I had an accident in the Scouts and I broke a vertebra in my back. I was paralyzed, hospitalized for 6 months. I had to learn to, it's nothing. It doesn't feel like it's nothing. It's not really the kind of answer you're looking for on your first date. But somehow I managed to get through it. We talked about Shakespeare and Hamlet, if it's relevant to stage it today or not, but obviously it wasn't really the same. When we got up to leave, my legs really shiver. Now, when I'm nervous, my legs shiver much more, and therefore I limp much more, but go and explain that to him. Yes, I can see that you're limping. Well, I was quite positive that that was the end of the date, but then he turned around and said, do you want me to come over? No. I have to get up really early tomorrow morning, I teach. Do you want to come another night, maybe? Silence. You know what, Dal? I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a kiss on the cheek, a hug, and then I'm going to go, okay? Okay. you all see me. What you just saw was a part of a performance called The Other Body. It's a very short part of it. It's an hour and 20 minutes long, so we just saw about 15 minutes. And first of all, I'd like to really thank you for coming to see me today and hear me speak. It's my first time in Boston, and it's the first lecture that I give now, so I'm quite nervous about it, so I hope I'll be okay. I want to share with you today about my coming out of the disability closet journey, and through that to talk about the Israeli society and its perception of the disabled. Is that okay? Can you guys, are fine? I'm going to be with my notes just in case I forget some things. I hope it's okay. So I'm sure you all know by now that my name is Nataly Zukerman. You've heard me say that a few times by now, and I'm a performance artist. I do many things, but in the last 2 years, in the last 4 years, I made 2 shows. One is The Other Body, which we just saw part of it, and the second one called Practice Makes Perfect. The 2 shows can be placed under the category of what we call disability arts or artability. In Israel, it's a non-existent category. We don't have that category, and we don't even have a name or a title for it. My identity as a disabled artist, to actually own and to be brave enough to say that I'm a disabled artist, it is a product of a long process of self-acceptance. And it's a product of a long process of saying at the age of 34 that I'm disabled and that I'm here and I'm present. It took me quite a long time, and you probably try and ask yourself why. Why it took her so long? Why only at the age of 34 I was managing to find myself in center stage, lifting a sign over my head saying that I was disabled? So like any good story, I would start at the beginning. So I was born in 1978, the eldest daughter out of 3 to Norit and David, who lived in a small village in the middle of Israel. And I would say that I had a normal childhood. I was a very creative girl. I love singing and I love dancing. My aunt likes to tell me the same story, that in every family occasion I made everyone, the whole of my family, to dance the hokey pokey every time. And I found it in a cassette that my dad recorded me when I was a child, and I made up all those kind of songs if I was in a Eurovision competition or something, and I sang them happily and loudly. And I danced. I danced in every ballet studio in the area where I grew up. And that's what I wanted to be until I was injured. I wanted to be a ballerina, and that was the only thing I was interested in. I even remember this horrible crisis I went through when my dance teacher didn't want to let me study how to stand on my toes like a ballerina because it was like too early. But I was so offended by it that I didn't want to go to study dancing again, and my mom had to make amends between the 2 of us in order for me to come back to the classes. But I wasn't just dancing, it was very, very physical. I was in the running team at school. I was practicing gymnastics at the time, and I was the fastest walker in my family, among my friends. I would always walk the fastest. That was kind of my nickname. And my physicality was such an integral part of my identity, you know, the identity that we all form at that age. And then I was injured. Before I continue with the story, I think I should explain a bit better about my injury first. So I'll be in the voice of the doctors, and so the doctors explain it. When an able person wants to take a step or to go for a walk, like most of us, the brain sends a command through the spinal cord, which is an electrical conductor, and then we walk. We just take a step. That's how we all do it. We don't really think about it. It's like the action that we do. In my case, my electrical conductor is damaged. So when I want to take a step, my brain sends a command, but instead of going right through, there is a short circuit, like a hiccup, you can say. And that's why you see my leg trembling. That's why I fall a lot. I have problem with my balance. So it's quite, so I would say that the feeling is that I can't trust my own legs. And that's, I don't know if you felt that you can't trust your own body, but that's kind of the feeling that I always have since I was 12. And when I was injured, And I realized I won't be able to dance again. I didn't want to talk about dancing anymore. I didn't want to hear about movement or physical activities, and for me that was the end of it. I didn't want to know anything about it. In the bed next to me at hospital lay a dancer called Tamar Borel. Borel is a really famous dancer and choreographer in the Israeli dancing, and she was in a car accident, and she was paralyzed, and she's in a wheelchair. And she was the next hospital next to me, and I wanted to be a ballerina, so I admire her from afar. It was quite scary, so it was always from afar, and I was much younger than her. When she was released from the hospital, she continued to make work and dance, and I continued to admire her from afar. A few years after I was released from the hospital, my old dance teacher, I met her down the street one day, and she told me that she went to see Tamar performs. And I was like, wow, how was it? Because I couldn't even imagine that someone in a wheelchair continues to dance and make work. It just didn't make sense to me. And she said to me, I almost remember the exact word, she said, she should leave the dancing for the dancers, and what she does is not consider in her own eyes to be dancing. And that really stayed with me for a very, very long time. And I actually thought she was right. The stage, or the front of the stage, is a place for people who can. And I couldn't, so I don't have a place there. So that really kind of made me realize that I need to put the whole dancing aside and not think about it again. And I was in the hospital for about 6 months, and then I was released, and I wasn't disabled anymore. I wasn't in a wheelchair anymore, and I started walking with my crutches. Now, being with crutches and you're a teenager, it's quite a complex and intimidating experience, because people are constantly looking at you the whole time, and it's that age you don't want people to look at you when you're 12. I had doctors examining my body, physiotherapists touch me all day, private investigators on behalf of the Social Security Office, or the kids at school, people down the street pointing, looking, gossiping. I don't know, I couldn't handle it. And I really wanted to disappear, and I wanted to dance. So instead, I decided I wanted to study drama. I was 14 and I wanted to do something, creative. And I had to audition to get in. And I would never forget that day. It was this beautiful auditorium. There was one teacher there, the drama teacher. And I entered the studio, and I was walking with my crutches down to the stage, and then up on the stage with my crutches, put my crutches down, and there was a chair, and the chair is my best friend since my injury. So I sat on the chair with my crutches down, and the whole of the auditorium was blacked out, and there was one light, and that light was on me. And I started my monologue, and the teacher looked at me, and I remember it was the first time that I enjoyed someone watching me, because all of a sudden I realized that I was in control of the gaze. I was in control of, when I'm on stage, I can control why would you look at me and how you would look at me. But at the outside world, I don't have that privilege. I don't have the privilege of realizing how the world will see me. So the reaction of me was that I always, when I walked outside, I was with my head down. I was always like that, putting big sunglasses and looking down, as if to say, if I would look down, therefore no one would look at me. If I wouldn't see you, you wouldn't see me. And after a while, I just decided at the age of 16 that I don't want to have my crutches on anymore. And the doctor said that was fine. And I really enjoyed the fact that most people that didn't know, about my injury just accepted it. And it took them quite a while to find out that I've got a disability. I lost my track. But in most places, people knew about my disability. They were very kind about it and very supportive. For example, school. I had to go to school every morning. I couldn't do that with the rest of my peers, so I had a special car drive taking me to school every day. Due to my back pains, I had quite horrible back pains at the time. It was approved and I didn't come to school a lot, so it was approved in advance, and it was okay with my teacher, and I had good grades also, but I couldn't run, or do physical exercises, so I was exempt from sports classes, and I was also exempt from school trips, because it was also involved like very physical things, or hiking, and so on. But I want you, at that time it really felt that they were accommodating my needs, but I want you to think of it from a different perspective, because it meant that I didn't do almost any activities, except of studying. I was actually excluded from most of the activities that my other friends did at school. So if we look at it from another perspective, they could have maybe changed the curriculum. Like, I can't run, but I can do Pilates quite well, or yoga. So they could have changed the curriculum in order for me to take part. Or school trips, for example. You know, it not necessarily means that everyone needs to hike. They could have taken us to a museum. But I didn't say anything. I just said, I can't do it. And they were like, yes, of course. Oh, no, if you can't do it, you don't have to do it. That's absolutely fine. So no one even thought to change, anything in order for me to take part. I'm a teacher today. And being on this side of the spectrum, I can't help it by wondering, was it not just the easiest way out? Sometimes in order to change things, you need to fight for them. You need to think out of the box. But then why do it? Why think out of the box if it's only one student? And I didn't want to be a burden. I don't want everyone else to suffer just because I can do it. So I was quiet about it. And it was for me and for them, and I think we both agreed that it's better if I'll stay at home. When I was 18, I graduated from high school. And in Israel, I'm quite supposed that you know that you go to the army at the age of 18. Again, I was excluded, was told I can't be recruited to the army. So I decided I wanted to study acting, and I'll start phoning acting schools. That didn't go really well also. The first acting school I phoned, I was asked if I can participate in stage in combat and like physical things like that. And I was like, I don't think so. And then they were really sorry, but we can't even let you audition. And that's the way it was, like for every school I tried to apply to. I didn't manage to get into one school, but I got into the preparatory program and not first years. They were like, okay, let's see how it worked. And don't get me wrong, I knew my affiliate would always have a limp. Like whatever character I'll do. And an actor needs to be versatile. They need to try and embody different characters, many characteristics. On the one hand, they need to be a chameleon, but then on the other hand, there is something called typecast. So how many limping characters there are? Not a lot. There's a few, but not a lot. And I didn't see on the Israeli stage, I didn't see any disabled actors. I didn't see them also in the cinema or in the dancing. So it was quite obvious that, it's not the right place for me. You might ask yourself, well, that was 20 years ago. And you're right, it was 20 years ago. But it's not that the situation now has changed. Like on the Israeli stage, you will see hearing actors playing deaf characters. You will see disabled characters played by able actors. I read an article, I think it was about a year ago, with an emerging disabled artist, actress. I don't know if she would define herself like that, but that's kind of my category that I put her. And she talked about her ordeal of getting into the acting classes in Israel. And that was 5 years ago, I think, she tried to get in. She wasn't accepted to any of them. So she decided in her last audition to lie. And she said she twisted her ankle. And she got in. So 2 weeks later, when they realized it's not disappearing, it's not going away, she was called into the office of the head of the school and was told she's on probation. Not because she lied. She was on probation, they told her, because they're not sure there is enough room for a disabled actress in the Israeli theater, so they'll have to see if it's working. So I got the message, and I decided to move and to be behind the scenes. And I started decided to start studying directing at Seminal Kibbutzim College. But even when you're a director, when you study it, you have to take movement classes or acting classes. I didn't want to take them. I didn't want to watch. It was so painful, to see things that you can't do, and that obviously reminds you what you can and what you want it to be. So I didn't want to do anything. But in my third year, we were all as a class asked to do a theatrical event in which we introduced ourselves to our classmates. Now we've been together for 3 years, so I was trying to think, what can I introduce that they don't know already about me? So I decided to be myself on stage and choose and show them actions that they never saw me do before, like dancing. So I invited everyone from my class to come and dance with me on stage. And in another segment, I exposed my back and asked them to color paint my scar. And I remember the reaction from everyone, they were all so much into it. And for me, it was the first time that I thought, I like being here. I like being on stage. And maybe I'm actually good at it. So not long after it, I decided to move to Scotland to study performance, as I said before. I was not 22. And it was always a dream of mine. My dad studied UCLA and my mom studied in London, so I always wanted to do it. And because I was really sheltered as a child, it was my way of owning my own independency and kind of finding my own way and path. And I studied device theatre and performance art, and it was all based on group work and collaborative process. On the first day, the first lesson, we had to play tag. Now I can't play it because you have to run. So I had to go to my tutor and go and say, well, hi, my name is, that's my injury, I can't do this and this and this, I have to sit aside, as I always do. Now, think how much anxiety it produces, because I try to pass to someone that doesn't have a disability, and it's my first day in a foreign country. It's the first day I was talking English for such a long time, no support system, so I was really nervous. And think that this is something I have to do in every first occasion. Every time I meet someone for the very first time, I have to tell the same story. And there's always the same look of, oh, wow, so sorry that you've been through that. But it's okay. Of course, you don't have to take part. You can sit aside. But my tutor didn't say that. He just kept asking me many questions about my injury. And then he said, there's no such thing here not to take part. We will change the rules of the game. We will change the rules of tag in order for you to take part. The rules won't define who we are. We will define the rules. Which meant, now only I get it, which meant that there isn't those who can't take part and those who can't. Everyone can take part in their own way. You just have to be really creative in order to make that happening. And that really changed the way I looked at life and about my body. And from that day onwards, I started participating in movement classes. Now, the tutors of the movement classes came from the acting department, and they were used to obviously work with actors who were very able. And I could see they were really struggling to accommodate my needs. It was really hard for them to adapt exercises. It was really hard to see me do exercises not the right way they think I should, but to find beauty in the way I did them. Or to think that maybe even if I can succeed by doing them, that doesn't necessarily mean I won't be able to be an actress. So it meant that they had to be creative, and also was I. I remember we were asked to do an exercise that we choreographed a piece and we had to perform in it. And I decided to make a piece with a chair, because as I said, the chair is my best friend. And I remember his surprised look on his face, because it was really good. It was a good performance. And from that day onwards, I started to shed this feeling or decision to be behind the scenes and to actually try and believe that my physicality and is worth seeing on stage, even if it doesn't the right thing, like according to the right criteria. And at that specific point, I realized that I never associated the word disabled with my situation. I wasn't disabled, I was the girl with the limp. And so is everyone else around me. You know, like, I never had like disabled friends. When in my special car ride to school, there were many other disabled kids. I don't remember any of their names. They weren't my friends, I excluded myself from them. I excluded myself from anything that was associated with disability. I wrote a journal in hospital, and I refer that to myself as being almost disabled. Because being disabled meant to me and my family that it means that I'm in a wheelchair, and it's like a final situation. I had a friend, she was next to me in the hospital, her name was Liat. She was in a wheelchair, therefore she was the miserable one that will stay in the wheelchair, and I was the one that got away. And also, the patients in the hospital, they excluded me also from that category because I was the one the doctors and the physiotherapists gave her a lot of attention because I could walk again. So it meant that I will be okay. So that was the atmosphere I grew up in. And only then I decided that I need to start dealing with the word disability and to start own it. When I moved back to Israel, I remember in one of the conversations I had with one of my friends, I referred to myself as being disabled, and they both jumped from the chair and went, "You're not disabled." And I had that a lot since. And on one hand, I was really flattered because it meant it's nothing, it's like a small thing that I suffer from. But at the other hand, I was like, why are they so scared of it? Why are they so panicking when I'm saying it? And I decided to go on a little research. And in my research, I learned that, or made a decision that the world is divided into two groups of people. Those who are disabled now, and those who will be disabled in the future. We are all here on the disability spectrum. And if you think about it, like, big percentage of us might need a hip replacement, or a caretaker, or will be in a nursing home. And I think because we all know that that's a possibility, that's why our fear of the disabled is so deep and unsettling. And I wanted to make work about it. I wanted to make work about my disability. And I thought to myself, where does my disability perform itself in the everyday life? And obviously, at home, maybe not obvious for you, but for me at home, I don't feel disabled at all because everything is accommodated to my own needs. But the minute I step to the outside world, my disability arises its head. I think my enemy is the staircase. Any staircase. It's like every time I meet the staircase, I get really nervous. You all, I presume, walk up the stairs, down the stairs, don't really have to think about it. I have to really concentrate, and I need to use the railing to walk up the stairs, or use them down to go down. And I hate that moment when you go to a staircase and then you realize there is a sign saying fresh paint. It's like, I was getting really nervous about it. I was like, and then I have to walk up like a little child, like 2 steps at a time. And then everyone looking at me because, why does she walk like a little child when she's not 2? So I get really nervous about it. So I decided that I want to make a piece about a staircase, because I realized that the staircase is actually what makes me being disabled. Because the staircase is the thing that is like a barrier fence that differentiates between those who can and those who can't. If we'll try and imagine the whole of the space, buildings and the outside world will be built as a spiral, we could all be able to walk together. So there won't be that division, well, at least in this specific case. So I decided to find a really crowded staircase and to try and walk up the stairs and down the stairs like an able person. So I tucked my abs in, and I wore this black, beautiful dress, and I tried to do the steps correctly. And every time I didn't manage to do the step correctly, I had to do it again, which meant it became a durational piece of about 3 to 4 hours. And I was invited to perform it in Jerusalem Cinematheque. They had an art festival. So invited to perform it, and I found that I don't know if you've been there, but if you've been there, there's a huge staircase in the center of the building, and I stood in the middle of the staircase for 3 hours, walking up and down, and obviously I walk much slowly than everyone else. So I was the element that interferes in the flow of the crowd the whole time. And people shouted at me, because I don't look disabled. I was wearing black, beautiful dress. They were like, what is she doing? So most people literally shouted at me. I remind you that we were in a disability festival. I got shouted at. I was asked politely if I would like help, or maybe you should take the lift, might be better. And in the corner of my eye, I saw this guy, and he was with his crutches. At the end of it, he came to speak to me. He said he has cerebral palsy. And he said to me that it was amazing because it's exactly the way he feels when he walks up and down the stairs. People keep shouting at him or telling him to, take the lift. And it was the first time for me that the person that we would all describe as disabled said that we share the same experience, the same feeling. And I realized at that moment that I need to stop hiding. When I was 19, a day before a trip to New York, it was my first time in New York, I bumped into my parents' coffee table and I sprained my pinky toe, which is not necessarily connected to my injury, but because it really helped, it bothered me to walk, and then I had to take my crutches with me. Thanks to my crutches, I didn't have to stand in any of the queues, not in JFK, and later on not in the Phantom of the Opera queue or to the Statue of Liberty. And because they gave me an outer and inner affirmation of the fact that I need help, standing and working. And without the crutches, I'm always scared that people won't believe me when I say I need help. And as a child, people didn't believe me, and they used to call me tired or lazy. And those are two adjectives that kind of seep deep into my personality. And it took me many years to realize that I'm not lazy. It is actually really hard for me to do it, and therefore I'm very tired. I understood that no matter what, if I'm having my crutches on or not, I need to start claiming my rights. I need to stop hiding. And I understood at that moment that that the person with an invisible disability staying in the closet isn't necessarily show about the fear of the need to hide, but rather the difficulty of exposure. And when you can't expose your identity, it's one of the main characteristics of oppression. And I was excluded. And I excluded myself because I believed that that's the way it should be. Because that was the way people said that this is the way you're supposed to be behind the scenes. And I believed them. So only at the age of 34, I realized that it was my time to be in the spotlight, to stand in the middle of the stage and lift a sign over my head saying the word disabled. And this is kind of my story, but I need to say something about the Israeli society and the perception of the disabled, not just about my own journey, because I really thought for many years that it was just me. But I don't know, but in the last year in Israel, there was a small, I wouldn't say big revolution, there's a small revolution that some of my disabled friends decided to do. And I'll just say that one anecdote, one of my good friends had an argument a few months ago with another friend, and they talked about the diversity of the political forces in Israel. And one of my friends said, well, we've got the disabled, they're a group, they have a political force, and she laughed at him. She said, they don't have are they a group? They don't have any political force. She was like, she didn't even know that they're part of it. So having a revolution this year in Israel, that's like it's the beginning of a revolution. It's not even a revolution. And in Israel, you get a pension. I don't get it because I didn't qualify for it. But if you qualify, you get a pension for about 2,000 shekel, which is very little. I don't know how much it's in dollars, but you have to pay everything from it, like rent, things that you need to buy, and it means that you stay poor. And if you work and you earn more than that, then they take part of your sums away. So it means that you always stay poor, like you're never able to earn money to actually, live properly. So in the small revolution that we had, they managed to raise the pension to to 4,000 shekels, which is like multiply it by half. And also the people, if they go to work, they can work, and it doesn't matter how much they earn, they would still be able to get the amount of money. As everything with the Israeli government, it still has not been signed properly. So we might go back to the revolution and find ourselves standing in the middle of the highway blocking everything. But that's kind of the situation at the minute in Israel, and the disabled population in Israel is 17% of the population. I will sum my things now. Thank you very much for hearing me today. I don't know if we've got time for questions, Guy? Time?
Yeah, there's a few questions.
So, if you want to, you don't have to. Do you have any questions?
I believe they have another class at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much for coming.